You know that feeling when you've been saving money for months? You check your account and the number has barely moved. You did everything right. You skipped the dinners out, you said no to the trip, you made coffee at home like some kind of monk. And the reward for all that discipline is a balance that looks almost exactly like it did last month. It's demoralizing. It feels like you're pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And you start wondering if any of this is even worth it. Here's what most people don't realize in that exact moment. They are standing at the hardest point of the entire wealth-building journey, and they have no idea that it gets easier from here. Because here's something that's going to sound completely backwards. Your first $5,000 is the single hardest money you will ever save. Harder than your first $50,000. And once you understand why, the whole game changes. My name is Paula, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people push through the brutal early stage of saving while millions of others give up right before things get good. If you've ever felt like saving money is a battle you keep losing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see your own progress differently. Now, before we get into why $5,000 is the hardest hill you'll ever climb, let me ask you something. When did you last hear someone talk about how hard the beginning is? Probably never. Every financial guru wants to show you the snowball rolling downhill, the compound interest curve going to the moon, the part where money makes money. Nobody wants to talk about the flat, boring, soul-crushing part at the very start, where nothing seems to be happening. And that silence is exactly why so many people quit. They think something is wrong with them. They think they're bad with money. The truth is, they're just standing in the part of the journey that everybody finds brutal and nobody warned them about. So let me explain why the beginning is so hard, because once you see the mechanics, you'll stop blaming yourself. The first reason is pure math, and it's stacked against you early on. Think about pushing a heavy boulder up a hill. The hardest part isn't the top, it's the very first shove, when the thing is dead still and gravity is doing nothing to help you. You're straining, you're sweating, and the boulder is barely creeping forward. That's your first $5,000. At that stage, your money isn't doing any of the work. There's no momentum, no compounding, no returns worth mentioning. If you've got $500 saved and it earns 8% in a year, that's $40. 40! That wouldn't cover a tank of gas in some cities. So every single dollar that lands in your account had to come from you, from your sweat, your discipline, your sacrifice. The money is contributing nothing yet. You are carrying the entire weight alone. Now fast forward to the person with $50,000 invested. That same 8% return is $4,000 a year. $4,000 showing up without them lifting a finger. Think about what that actually means. That's a chunk of their next milestone being handed to them for free, while the person starting from zero has to grind out every cent by hand. Same 8%, same market, completely different experience. The beginner is rowing the boat alone against the current. The person with 50 grand has a motor. That is the entire difference, and it has nothing to do with being smarter or more disciplined. It's just that money, once you have enough of it, starts pulling its own weight, and in the beginning, you have none of that help. Now, let me make this even more concrete because the contrast is wild when you actually picture it. Imagine two people. Both decide to save $200 a month. The first person is starting from zero. The second person already has $50,000 sitting in investments. At the end of the year, the first person has saved $2,400, and basically all of it came out of their paycheck. The second person also put in their $2,400, but their existing money quietly threw another $4,000 on top. So they put in the same effort, made the same sacrifice, and ended the year more than $6,000 richer instead of $2,400. The beginner did the harder thing and got less to show for it. That's not unfair, that's just the shape of the curve. And it's exactly why the beginning feels like you're running on a treadmill while everyone else seems to glide. But here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part almost nobody talks about. The math is only half the story. The bigger reason your first $5,000 is so hard happens inside your head. When you have nothing saved, your brain operates in what psychologists call survival mode. Every financial decision gets filtered through fear. You're not thinking about growth or strategy or compound interest. You're thinking, can I make it to Friday? And in that state, your brain literally doesn't have the bandwidth to think long term. It's like trying to plan next year's vacation when your kitchen is on fire. The fire wins every time. Researchers have actually measured this. Studies on scarcity show that financial stress eats up so much mental capacity that it's like losing a chunk of your IQ in the moment. Not because you're not smart, but because survival mode is hijacking the part of your brain you'd normally use to plan and decide. So when you're saving your first $5,000, you're not just fighting the math, you're fighting your own wiring. Every unexpected expense feels like a disaster, because it is. The car needs brakes, and there goes 3 weeks of savings. The dentist finds a cavity, and your progress evaporates. You're trying to build something while standing on ground that keeps shaking. That is genuinely hard. It is not a character flaw. It is the actual lived experience of starting from zero, and anyone who pretends otherwise has forgotten what it felt like or never went through it. There's another layer to this that makes the early stage even brutal, and it's the comparison trap. When you're grinding out your first few thousand, you're surrounded by people who seem to be effortlessly ahead. Your coworker just booked a beach vacation, your friend upgraded their car, somebody on your feed is posting from a rooftop somewhere, and you're sitting there proud of yourself for not buying a $4 coffee. It feels pathetic by comparison, and that feeling makes people want to throw in the towel and just join everyone else in spending. But here's what you can't see from the outside. A huge number of those people are one missed paycheck away from disaster. The vacation went on a credit card. The car comes with a payment that owns them. You're playing a completely different game than they are, and the fact that your version is quieter doesn't mean it's losing. It means you're building something real while they're renting the appearance of it. Now, let me show you what changes, because this is where it gets good. Once you cross that first real milestone, 3 things start working in your favor at the same time, and they compound on each other. The first is momentum. By the time you've saved $5,000, you have proof that you can do it. The next $5,000 doesn't feel like climbing a cliff anymore because you already know the path. You've done the hard mental work of building the habit, and habits, once they're set, run almost on autopilot. Saving stops being a daily battle of willpower you have to pass over and over and starts being just what you do while you live your life. The second thing is breathing room. With a cushion in the bank, that broken down car stops being a catastrophe and becomes an annoyance. Your progress doesn't get wiped out every time life happens because you've got a buffer absorbing the hits. And here's the quiet magic of that. When your savings stop getting reset to zero every few months, they finally start to climb in a straight line instead of a jagged sawtooth. You're no longer rebuilding the same $1,000 over and over. You're actually moving forward. And the third thing is compounding finally waking up. Remember the person with $50,000 getting $4,000 a year for free? You're on your way to becoming that person. Somewhere along the climb, your money quietly starts pulling more of the weight. It's slow at first, almost invisible, and then one day you realize a real chunk of your growth came from your money and not your paycheck. That's the boulder cresting the hill. Everything before it felt like pushing against gravity. Everything after it feels like gravity is finally on your side. But stick with me, because this next part is the whole point of the video, and it's the thing that matters more than any number in your account. When you save your first $5,000, you're not really accumulating money, you're accumulating evidence. You're proving to yourself that you are the kind of person who can set a goal, sacrifice for it, and follow through when it would be easier to quit. That sounds like a small thing. It is not. It is everything. Because the dollar amount is temporary. You could spend $5,000 in a weekend if you wanted to, but the identity you build getting there is permanent. Think think about what it actually takes. To save that first $5,000 from nothing, you had to track where your money went, you had to say no to things you wanted, you had to resist the impulse buy 100 times. You had to keep going during the flat, boring stretch when nothing seemed to be working, and you did it anyway. The day you cross that line, you stop being someone who hopes to save money and you become someone who saves money. That's an identity shift, and identity is what drives every decision you make from then on. People with the saver identity don't agonize over every purchase because the behavior is baked in. They see a chance to cut an expense and they take it automatically. They notice ways to earn more because their brain is finally out of survival mode and scanning for opportunity instead of just threats. The money was never the real prize. The person you became chasing it was.
And that shift unlocks something most people never connect to their savings account: options. When you have a little money behind you, you start seeing opportunities you used to be blind to. A certification that could bump your salary but costs a few hundred up front. Before, that was impossible. Now, it's a decision. A chance to switch to a better job that pays more but feels risky. Before, you couldn't take the risk because you needed this paycheck to survive. Now, you can actually consider it. Even at work, it changes how you carry yourself. When you've got a small cushion, you negotiate a little harder. You push back a little more. You stop saying yes to everything out of fear. People notice that confidence, and confidence tends to get rewarded. So the money doesn't just sit there. It quietly opens doors that were locked the entire time you were broke. And walking through those doors is often what accelerates the whole journey. Now here is where most people completely sabotage themselves, and I see it happen constantly. They get close to that first $5,000, they feel the relief starting to set in, and then they blow it. They tell themselves they've been so disciplined that they deserve a reward. So they book the trip, or they upgrade the phone, or they finally buy the thing they've been eyeing for months. And in one weekend, they erase 6 months of grinding and drop themselves right back to the bottom of the hill. Then they have to start the hardest part all over again, except now they're also discouraged because they know exactly how painful that climb was. This is the single most common way people stay stuck for years, not because they can't save, but because they keep resetting their own progress right before the part where it gets easier. It's like sprinting most of the way up a hill and then deliberately rolling back down to the bottom to catch your breath. The exhaustion was the whole point of getting up there. Don't give it back. So let me be direct with you. That first $5,000 is not a reward you cash in. It's a foundation you protect. It is the hardest, most valuable money you will ever save, precisely because it's the money that has zero help. No momentum, no buffer, no compounding, just you and your discipline against the flat part of the curve, which means every dollar of it is proof of something the next $50,000 will never have to prove. By the time you're saving your 10,000, your 20th, your 50th, you'll have momentum carrying you, a buffer protecting you, and compounding quietly working in the background. The grind you're in right now, that's the down payment on all of that. And there's one more thing that surprises people. The skills don't change. The person with $50,000 isn't using some secret strategy you don't have access to. They're buying the same index funds, using the same boring accounts, following the same simple principles you can follow today with $500. The only thing that changed is scale and momentum and the fact that they didn't quit during the part you're in right now. That's it. That's the whole secret. They survived the hard beginning, and you're in the middle of surviving it too. There is no membership card that unlocks at a certain net worth. There's no velvet rope. The whole thing is available to you right now, today, exactly as you are. The only difference between you and them is time and persistence. And persistence is the one variable completely inside your control. And let me give you something practical here, because understanding why it's hard doesn't make it easier on its own. The single best thing you can do during this stage is take willpower out of the equation entirely. Willpower is a terrible long-term strategy because survival mode brain burns through it fast. So instead, automate the decision. Set up an automatic transfer that moves money the day your paycheck hits, before you ever see it or get a chance to talk yourself out of it. Make it small enough that it doesn't trigger panic. Even $25 a week is fine to start. The amount matters way less than the consistency, because what you're really doing in these early months is not accumulating money, you're installing a system that runs without you. Once the transfer is automatic, saving stops being a daily test of discipline you have to pass over and over and becomes something that just happens in the background while you live your life. The second practical move is to shrink the goal until it stops scaring you. $5,000 sounds impossible when you're starting from zero, and a goal that feels impossible is a goal your brain quietly gives up on. So don't aim at 5,000, aim at 500, just 500. Hit that and you've already done something most people never manage, and you've gotten your brain its first taste of winning. Then aim at the next 500. Stack 10 of those little wins and you've got your 5,000. Except it never felt like one giant, terrifying mountain. It felt like 10 manageable hills. This is exactly how the people who make it actually do it. They don't have more discipline than you. They just broke the climb into pieces small enough that quitting never seemed worth it. And here's the part that should genuinely give you hope. The early stage doesn't last forever, and it's almost always shorter than it feels in the middle of it. When you're inside the grind, time moves slowly. Every month feels like a year, and the finish line looks like it's painted on the horizon and never gets closer. But look backwards at anything hard you've ever pushed through, and you'll notice the same thing every time. The middle felt endless. The end arrived faster than you expected. Saving is no different. One day you check the account out of habit, bracing for that familiar disappointment, and the number is bigger than you remembered. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because all those small automatic transfers and tiny wins quietly stacked up while you weren't watching. That moment is closer than you think, and it changes everything about how the rest of the journey feels. So if you're sitting there right now staring at a balance that's barely moved, feeling like all your effort is disappearing into a void, I need you to hear this clearly. You are not failing. You are doing the hardest part of the entire journey, the part with no help and no momentum and no applause. The reason it feels impossible is because it genuinely is the steepest section of the climb. But every dollar you save right now is worth more than a dollar you'll save later, because right now you're not just building savings, you're building the person who finishes the climb. Don't quit in the dip. Don't reward yourself by erasing your progress. Just keep pushing the boulder, because you are so much closer to the top than it feels. And once it crests that hill, you'll wonder why anyone ever told you the beginning was the easy part. It never was. It was always going to be the hardest thing you ever did, and you're already doing it. Picture yourself a year from now looking back at this exact moment, at the version of you that almost gave up because the balance wasn't moving fast enough. That future version of you is going to be so glad you kept going. They're going to remember this as the season everything quietly turned around for good, even though it sure didn't feel like it at the time.